I never thought I'd be so grateful to be a parent. For a long time, I viewed parenthood as a curse. 18 years of your life being borrowed. That's why I swore I'd never have any kids. Unfortunately, life has a way of giving you exactly what you didn't ask for, and for me, that happened when I myself was still a child. I was 17 when my little Joshie was born. 8 pounds, 6 ounces. A winter baby. I don't know. I guess I was just scared at the time. Scared of all the responsibility, sure, but more than anything, I was scared that I didn't have what it takes. Me and his mother had only been together for 2 years before we made the same dumb mistake as every other teen parent in the country. I thought about what this meant for me. What I was going to have to become in order to support this new life outside of my own. I was almost reluctant when I had to start working. Maybe reluctant isn't the word for it. The word I'm looking for is probably closer to resentful. Of course, that feeling only lasted for around a year or two. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it followed me around all the way up the corporate ladder, as I went from employee to supervisor, all the way up to district manager. I didn't get the pride of knowing I'd done it for myself. I hadn't made something out of myself because that's what I wanted for myself. I did it because I needed to. I may have been resentful, but I was not the kind of person to let my baby starve. I wasn't the kind of person to not show up for my baby's mother. Even still, she noticed how withdrawn I'd become. How she was the only one singing his lullabies at night. Tucking him in. Kissing his forehead. Comforting him. For a long time, the extent of parental bonding between me and my son was when I gave him the occasional bath or when I changed his diapers. In my mind, my only job was to keep food on the table. It drove a wedge between me and his mom. During those early years, we found ourselves fighting nearly every night. She demanded a kind of presence that I just didn't believe I possessed. Of course, Joshua was there to witness all of it. The screaming kicks, the wall punching, the kind of things that no toddler should see. It got to a point where we didn't even know what we were doing anymore. Why we were even still together. I guess the answer was Joshie. Because despite what I felt, there was still a part of me deep down that wanted to give my son a good life. Even if I didn't know how to show up for him emotionally, I could still fight to make sure he lived comfortably. When his mother died, though, it was like I became numb to absolutely everything. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. No superficial hope of maybe someday being an actual functioning family after I stopped being so pathetic. God made sure that I learned my lesson in the most eye-opening way imaginable. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't some unexpected tragic loss. We had to watch her. Watch her as she dwindled away more and more every day. Watch her cheeks sink in and darken. Watch her lose her hair. Lose her weight. We watched her take her last breath on that hospital bed before the beep of her heart monitor left both of us crying our eyes out. Joshie was only 6 years old when she passed. Too young to understand the concept of death, but old enough to know that his mom wasn't there anymore. Old enough to feel the pain that came with knowing she wouldn't be coming back. And you know what I did? I made him sleep alone. In the dark. In his own bed. God, I know. I fucking know I'm a terrible person, but fuck me, I am trying, okay? I'm trying to do better. For 6 weeks, I made him sleep alone in that room. I pretended to be asleep when he asked to sleep in my bed. I outright refused him sometimes. I was afraid of needing him. Afraid he'd need me too. I learned a lot during those 6 weeks. I was in the dark too. The amount of responsibility that now fell on my shoulders was so overwhelming that it numbed me. I couldn't fail if I didn't try. That's what I truly believed, what I had convinced myself of in a state of vulnerability and exhaustion. But I was failing. I had, without question, failed harder than I had ever failed in my entire life. And when I came to that realization, I made a vow to myself to step up. To be the man that my son needed me to be. I started letting him sleep in my bed routinely. Singing to him every night. Rocking him in my lap until little snores escaped his throat. I took him to the park every day. Bought him new toys every week. Watched movies with him. Played with him. It was like I was trying to make up for all of the lost time. Josh became more comfortable during this period. He talked to me more. Opened up to me about things. I finally learned what he actually liked. His favorite foods, favorite superheroes, that kind of thing. For the first time in my life, I actually felt attentive. More than just a paycheck and the occasional bath. He also revealed some things that troubled me a bit. The kind of things that made me worry that his mom's death had hit him harder than he was letting on. Like, for example, I had been talking casually with him the other day while we ate cereal and watched some Saturday morning cartoons. I think we had been joking around about one of the scenes from SpongeBob when we heard a dish crash in the kitchen. Now, me personally, I had nearly jumped out my skin at the sudden burst of noise, but Josh, he hardly even flinched. That was just Mom, I think, he cooed as calmly as possible. She comes up here sometimes. Of course, I couldn't help but look at him sideways. Is that right? I asked intuitively. You think that's your mom in there? Yeah, probably. I hear her walking around sometimes. She's super loud. My heart broke for him. The imagination of a child does some miraculous things when grief is involved. I wouldn't be surprised if he really did think his mom was still just hiding around the house. Well, I'll have to keep a better ear out. Hopefully, I'll hear her too one day. Josh's head turned slowly in my direction. He stared at me for a moment before responding. You don't already? She talks about you all the time. I felt a chill run down my spine. I wish I did, buddy. What exactly does she say about me? It's hard to hear her sometimes. She's usually always in the basement. I think she cries a lot. A silence lingered in the air for a long while as I thought about how to appropriately respond. Clearly, he was hurting. Trying to make sense of a terrible thing. It had to have been a part of his process. I didn't like the sound of his whole, she's usually in the basement, comment, though. It was oddly specific. It didn't sound like something he just told himself to cope. It felt real. I guess that's why I started listening so intently at night. Training my ears to pick up even the slightest of noises while the house was silent. I knew she was gone, but a part of me still believed I could catch a glimpse of her. It was delusional, but I was weak. Vulnerable. Some nights, I really thought I could hear her. Her whispers flowed faintly through the ventilation. Soft cries snaked their way into my eardrums at odd hours of the night. My son started acting strangely around this time. I'd find him standing silently in front of the basement door, staring blankly at the door with hollow eyes. It'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, and there he'd be, unmoving. I caught him talking to himself, whispering under his breath as though someone else were in the room with him. All I'd ever managed to catch were brief glimpses of the conversation, though. However, what I heard was still enough to make my heart throb. He's doing better. He spends time with me now. He tells me he loves me. I don't want to leave him yet. I found it wholesome. It was pretty heartwarming to know that I was redeeming myself in his eyes. I allowed myself to have hope that I was doing something right for once. The feeling proved to be short-lived, unfortunately. In the weeks that followed, Josh actually became withdrawn and distant. It almost felt like he was avoiding me, and I wanted to find out why. So I asked him, "You've been pretty quiet lately. Anything you want to talk about?" He looked up from his bowl of cereal, spoon in hand, before staring at me for a moment. Analyzing me. Analyzing the room before gesturing for me to lean down so he could whisper in my ear. "Mom says I shouldn't talk to you." "Why would she tell you that?" "She knows you can talk to me about anything," I replied, almost offended. "She says you hate me. She says you don't love me because I was born." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been working so hard, putting so much into making my mistakes up to him. And now it was like my heart was shattering into a million pieces. Apparently, so was his. because I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. She says you want to hurt me. She can feel it. She knows what you think. She hears it from me because she says you don't like to say it out loud. Through tears and with a broken voice, I did my best to respond to him. Joshie, honey, no. No, no, no. I would never hurt you. Daddy had you when he was still a baby too. It's scary, buddy. But all I ever wanted was to make sure you grew up happy. I don't feel very happy. There was a huge crash in the living room, causing Josh to jump and reside within himself. It's okay. I'll go check it out. Just stay here for me, okay? I'll be right back. When I entered the living room, I stopped so hard my socks slid across the hardwood. Every single family photo of ours lay broken in a neat little pile in the center of the living room. The broken frames looked deliberately placed, and glass glistened atop the hardwood. As I stood there in shock at what I was seeing, my son snaked past me and disappeared into his room. She heard me. She heard me. Oh, gosh, she heard me. I must have spent a solid 45 minutes picking glass off the floor, and my mind raced the entire time I cleaned. I couldn't get Josh's words out of my head. I didn't hate him. I never hated him. God, you have to believe me. Trash bag in hand, I headed downstairs to toss the garbage into the bin. That's where I found him. Staring at the door to the basement. Swaying back and forth. Whispering to himself. Please don't make me go. 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 The basement door slowly opened on its own, revealing near complete darkness. Josh turned towards me slowly. She's just trying to protect me. Those were his last words to me before he disappeared down the dark stairwell. I felt frozen in place. Completely glued to the floor for what felt like hours before I broke out of my trance and instincts kicked in. I crept down the stairs, calling Josh's name every few steps. I received no reply. In fact, everything seemed more still than ever before. I searched the basement up and down, combed through every square inch of the room. Josh was nowhere to be found. He just disappeared without a trace. Without a single sound. I tried to fight the panic, but it seeped through the cracks. Left me running in circles, repeating Josh's name over and over again to no avail. I ended up calling the police. They searched the house themselves, and they too found nothing. When I explained what happened, they looked at me like I was insane. It was as though they thought it was somehow my fault, and when they told me they'd be in touch, there was a bit of an accusatory tone in their voice. I went to bed that night feeling empty. Lost. Completely shocked and broken all over again. I couldn't even sleep. All I could do was stare up at the ceiling fan, watching the clock on my nightstand. 11 p.m. 12 a.m. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. At around 2:30 in the morning, I started hearing things. I thought I was losing my mind at first, but the more time went on, the more clear the noises became. I heard giggling, whispers and laughs coming through the walls and nesting in my eardrums. It was hard to decipher when it started, but by the end, I heard what was unmistakably my son. Dad. Mom says you can come down now.